Are you ready for this French dip sandwich? Hello, everyone. We're going to dive straight into this wonderful meal here. We got a chuck roast that I'm going to divide in half. Only need 2.5 pounds for this recipe. And of course, I got another one coming up right after this, so I'm going to use the other half. Go ahead and wash it, pat it dry. Now, as you can see, I've already sliced it in half. This chuck roast is roughly about 4 pounds. I need 2.5 pounds each recipe. This chuck roast here does have a lot of fat and marbling. You can always cut it on off. But I like to keep it on to, make it more juicy. So I'm going to remove the other half. And now I'm just going to add the new chuck roast that I had to purchase to make up the poundage. You can see there is a color difference, but it's okay once just been in the freezer for just a little while. But it's going to all taste the same. You're going to start off with the first step, and that's the marinade. Basically, olive oil, a half a teaspoon of oregano, a half a teaspoon of thyme. If you don't have thyme, that's fine. You can do all oregano. I prefer margarine, so I use half and half for this one. Of course, salt and pepper, about a teaspoon each to start. Now I'm using here 2.5 pounds roughly. So remember, more meat, more seasoning. I'm going to just cover this and place this in the refrigerator at least 2 hours. If you can do it overnight, that's even better. Minimum, I would say, is 30 minutes. Now go ahead and put those fingers to work. Make sure you season it on the front and the back and the sides, if you can, of your chuck roast. Now, typically, French dip sandwiches are not made with chuck roast, but you cannot beat a deal. Chuck roasts are so versatile, and you can use them in a lot of applications. If you was to make this from a regular roast, it would cost a ridiculous amount. Now we're going to move on to the second step. Take that meat out the fridge and just let it come to room temperature. We got a large onion there. We got some Worcestershire sauce, some garlic, and of course some soy and some chicken. I'm sorry, not chicken, some beef stock. Let's go ahead and sear that meat. Put a little olive oil. You don't need much because the meat is already rubbed on down. So go ahead and heat that up. Make sure that pan is hot because we want to get a nice little sear on it. Alrighty, I'm going to throw in my little smaller cuts there. I'm going to call those my tester pieces. I got to taste it, right? Any excuse, I know. Now, we're not cooking it on top of the stove. We just want to get it a little brown. There is something about the sound of a pan sizzling that I love. I don't care what it is. What's in the pan? Fried chicken. Anything just to hear that sizzle. I think they need to make that into a little sleep ambient sound. Alrighty, y'all. I'm stopping my shenanigans. We're gonna add some garlic cloves in there. Now, you do not have to saute it. If you want to saute the onions and the garlic, you can, but you don't have to in my recipe. And that's a large onion going in. And if I forgot to tell you, it is 3 to 4 cloves of minced garlic. And now I'm going to add some beef stock. You can use beef broth, you can use bouillon, whatever you have, use it. I'm going with stock today because I need a little bit more depth to this dish, especially for that sauce. And I'm going with 2 cups. Typically, this recipe calls for a little wine, but I do not like wine in my beef stew and any of my beef dishes. Now I'm going to add 1 tablespoon of soy sauce. And of course, we're going to add 1 tablespoon of Worcestershire sauce. I can't never say that. I'm gonna call it something else. I'm gonna name it something else. Shire sauce. How about that? And we're just gonna mix it up real good. I am taking the veggies off of that meat so I can get it in the broth. All right, I'm going to come back to make sure a lot of that garlic is in that broth before I place it in the oven. Now, you can actually cook this in a slow cooker with no issues at all. You're going to place it in the slow cooker after you actually sear the meat. So, sear the meat, and then you would put the remaining ingredients in there. Now I'm going to put it for 300 degrees. I'm going to cover it and cook it on a very low temperature for 2.5 pounds. You're looking between anywhere of 2 to 4 hours, depending on the thickness. And you can see it is done. And now we're going to get started on the last step, and that's the sauce. Of course, I've taken the meat out of the pot. And now I'm going to remove those onions, which I will be using on top of the sandwich. Of course, they're very soft. I don't mind that. But if you're a texture person, you can cut up some more onions and saute them on top of the stove with some butter. This sandwich is called a French dip sandwich. And the sauce is called, it's French, y'all, so I might butcher it, au jus or jus. Okay, French folks, don't come for me. I'm trying. But whatever it's called, it is so tasty. Now, I don't know about you, but that looks good. We're going to go ahead and cover that and set it aside while we work on the sauce. I took a little bit of that oil out the pan, but I'll give you a tip on that later. We're going to go ahead and start on our third layer of seasonings here. That's 1 teaspoon of onion powder, 1 teaspoon of garlic powder, a 1/4 teaspoon of sugar and thyme, and a 1/4 teaspoon of parsley dried. And of course, you're going to taste it before we do our next one. And that is adding a beef bouillon cube. Now, of course, I tasted and I only needed a half of a cube. I'm also going to add a half a cup of beef stock because I'm going to reduce it down to intensify that flavor. If you find that your sauce is a little bit more oilier than you like, of course you can place it in the fridge or in the freezer and wait for that fat to congeal up. And then you'll have a less oily sauce. You see, I've got to taste it again. I got to make sure if I need anything more. If you find you need a little bit more seasoning, go ahead and add it in. You can also add about a tablespoon of butter as well to finish the sauce off. I'm going to cook this sauce for anywhere between 20 to 30 minutes. Remember, the longer you cook this sauce, the lower or less sauce you're going to have. So keep that in mind. You may need to add more stock. And now it's going to be time to put that sandwich together. Of course, I made some extra to go with it. My son was so nice to go out and get these hoagie rolls, but they're softer than what you would probably want to use, but you could definitely use them. Just toast them up. A nice crusty chewy roll is wonderful with this. And you can take the meat out and slice it up. It's not going to slice like sandwich meat, but once it's cooled down, you can still cut it across the grain or opposite the grain. I'm just going to do a rough chop here with the end of this wooden utensil. And now your other option is cheese or no cheese. I'm a no cheese person for this sandwich. But I just have to show you, right? And plus my son, he likes cheese on his. And there it is, y'all. It is done. You can finish it off if you want to with some mayo. I actually purchased some prepared horseradish sauce just to spice it up a little bit. And look at that jus, au jus. It is tasty. Go ahead and dip that sandwich in. You see I made some seasoned steak fries there. And I have a little short that's going to come out if you would like to make it. It's so easy, y'all. And thank you, wonderful guys, for watching. I really appreciate your support. And remember, we got the second half of this chuck roast coming up shortly. Thanks again.